Having crossed the Indus and secured an alliance with Taxiles, Alexander the Great marched eastward into the Punjab, towards the domain of Porus, a powerful Indian king who had defiantly refused to submit. In May 326 BCE, the two armies faced each other across the swollen Hydaspes River, famously known as River Jhelum. Porus, a giant of a man, commanded a formidable army, its centerpiece a terrifying array of war elephants, an obstacle Alexander had never faced on such a scale. The Battle of the Hydaspes would be one of Alexander's most challenging and tactically brilliant engagements. After a period of rest and reorganization in Taxiles, where he had been welcomed as an ally by King Taxiles, Alexander the Great prepared for the next major confrontation of his Indian campaign. His target was Porus, a powerful and proud Indian king whose kingdom lay east of the Hydaspes River, the modern Jhelum River, one of the 5 great rivers of the Punjab in Pakistan, located at approximately 1.5 hours' drive from Islamabad, the current capital of Pakistan. Unlike Taxiles, Porus had rejected Alexander's summons to submit and pay tribute, choosing instead to defend his kingdom. He was described by ancient historians as a man of immense stature, reportedly over 7 feet tall, courage, and regal bearing. In May of 326 BCE, Alexander marched his army, now augmented by Indian troops and elephants provided by Taxiles, towards the Hydaspes. When he reached the western bank, he found Porus and his army waiting for him on the opposite side, determined to contest his crossing. The Hydaspes was a formidable obstacle. It was wide, deep, and swollen by the melting snows from the Himalayas and the early monsoon rains. Its current, strong and treacherous, Porus's army was impressive and deployed in a strong defensive position along the eastern bank. It consisted of a substantial force of infantry, skilled archers whose longbows were reportedly very powerful, cavalry, and war chariots. But its most formidable and visually intimidating component was a large contingent of war elephants, estimated by Arrian at around 200, whereas some other sources give lower numbers, perhaps 85 to 130. These were arrayed like a mobile fortress along the riverbank, at intervals between blocks of infantry. The elephants, with their mahouts, and often carrying towers, hoodas with javelin men or archers, were intended to terrify the Macedonian horses, who were unaccustomed to their sight and smell, and to break the cohesion of the Macedonian phalanx. Porus himself, mounted on a particularly large war elephant, commanded his forces from the center. Alexander, faced with this daunting opposition and the difficult river, knew that a direct, frontal assault across the Hydaspes in the face of Porus's prepared defenses, especially the elephants, would be suicidal. His cavalry would be unable to function effectively against the elephants, and his infantry would suffer terribly. He therefore needed a plan that involved deception, surprise, and tactical ingenuity. For several days, Alexander engaged in a brilliant war of wits and deception designed to confuse Porus and conceal his true intentions. He marched his troops up and down his side of the riverbank, making conspicuous displays of activity at various points, as if preparing to cross. He had large quantities of grain brought to his camp, giving the impression that he intended to wait until the river level fell later in the season. He spread rumors that he would force a crossing at a particular ford. Porus, initially vigilant, shadowed Alexander's movements on the opposite bank, moving his elephants and troops to counter any perceived crossing attempt. Alexander also made use of numerous small islands in the river. He would send detachments of troops to these islands, sometimes making noisy demonstrations, further distracting Porus and keeping him guessing. His aim was to wear down the enemy's vigilance through a series of feints and false alarms, so that when the real crossing attempt came, Porus might dismiss it as just another diversion. After several days of these maneuvers, Alexander identified his chosen crossing point. It was a wooded headland, some 17 miles, about 27 kilometers, upstream from his main camp, where the river bent sharply and a large, densely forested island in midstream would help to screen his movements from Porus' observers on the opposite bank. This location was also near a deep ravine on his own side, which could conceal the assembly of his strike force. His plan was audacious. He would leave Craterus, one of his most trusted generals, in command of the main camp opposite Porus's position. With a significant portion of the army, including Taxiles' Indian contingent, Craterus was given explicit instructions. He was not to attempt a crossing if Porus moved his entire army, including all the elephants, upstream to confront Alexander. If, however, Porus moved only part of his army and left some elephants behind at the main camp, Craterus was to cross and attack. If Porus took all his elephants to meet Alexander, then Craterus was to cross immediately, as the absence of elephants would make the crossing much safer. This complex set of instructions relied heavily on Craterus's judgment and the flow of battle. Under the cover of a dark and stormy night, with thunder, lightning, and heavy rain conveniently masking the noise and movement of his troops, Alexander secretly led his elite strike force, comprising the companion cavalry, Hydaspes, Agrianian light infantry, archers, and some phalanx units, to the concealed crossing point. The storm, while providing cover, also made the crossing itself incredibly hazardous. The river was rough, and visibility was poor. They used a flotilla of boats, including some that had been cleverly dismantled and transported overland in sections and reassembled, as well as improvised rafts made from stuffed tent skins. Despite the difficulties, Alexander and his strike force managed to make the perilous crossing, landing on the eastern bank, undetected by Porus's main army. However, they initially landed not on the true eastern bank, but on what they thought was a peninsula, but turned out to be another large island, separated from the mainland by a smaller but still deep and fast-flowing channel of the river. This unexpected obstacle caused further delay and difficulty, as the soldiers had to wade, sometimes up to their necks, through this second channel. Finally, as dawn approached, Alexander's entire strike force, numbering around 6,000 cavalry and 5,000 infantry, was assembled on the eastern bank of the Hydaspes, deep in Porus's territory and well upstream from his main encampment. They had achieved complete strategic surprise. Porus was initially informed by his scouts that a small Macedonian force had crossed. Still, perhaps, believing it to be another of Alexander's feints, or underestimating its size, he dispatched his son, also named Porus, or perhaps a kinsman, with a contingent of about 2,000 cavalry and 120 chariots to investigate and repel the landing. This detachment, however, would soon discover they were facing not a minor raiding party, but Alexander the Great himself, at the head of his elite troops. The first phase of the Battle of the Hydaspes was about to begin, a battle that would pit Macedonian tactical flexibility against the raw power of Indian war elephants. I really hope you enjoyed the vlog about this amazing historical event. If you did, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more fun content.